Hello, my little friends. How are you? Nice to see you again. Today, you are going to listen to one of the stories of King Arthur, a wicked plot. The rule of King Arthur was a golden age in the story of Britain. Never before had there been a king who was so brave and so good. Even bad people tried to live better lives. But now, I'm going to tell you something that will surprise you. One of the most evil people of all was Arthur's own sister. She was so weak she even tried to kill him. This is how it happened. Arthur's sister was called Morgan Le Fay. She was older than him and she was very jealous of Arthur. Even Arthur never suspected this because she disguised it so well. She pretended to like him and went around saying how wonderful he was, but all the time she hated him and couldn't wait to get rid of him. Morgan was married to Lord Uriens, but she was secretly in love with a handsome knight called Sir Accolon. In the depths of the night, when everyone was asleep, she lay awake scheming. But in the morning she smiled at her husband as if she had never had a bad thought in her life. The more she stayed awake like this in the middle of the night, the more twisted she became. She grew pale and thin. But still, her husband never suspected anything was wrong. He loved her so much he would never dream of thinking anything bad of her. The trouble is, Sir Accolon loved her too. He knew he shouldn't because she was married to Lord Uriens. But even the best of men have been known to fall in love with the wrong woman. What Accolon didn't know is that Morgan meant to kill both her husband and King Arthur, so she could marry Accolon and rule the country with him. He would be King Accolon and she would be Queen Morgan. I promise you, Sir Accolon had no idea of this evil plan. One day, Arthur and Accolon rode out into the forest together to hunt stags. By the afternoon, they were very tired and they suddenly realized they were lost. Everything looked strange and they had no idea which way to go. I can't understand it, said Arthur. I thought I knew this forest inside out. What he didn't know is that Morgan had cast a spell over them. Yes, she too had magic powers, which she used not for good but for evil. As darkness fell, King Arthur and Sir Accolon suddenly came across a lake, its waters shimmering in the moonlight. It was the lake where the upraised arm had held Excalibur, but as he was under Morgan's spell, he didn't recognize it. I haven't seen this lake before, said King Arthur. Have you? No, never, answered Accolon. Then they heard music and realized it was coming from a boat floating out in the lake. It was music such as they had never heard before, very beautiful but very strange. They wanted to turn away but couldn't. The boat drew closer to shore. It was lit by flaming torches, like the Olympic torch we have today. And by the light of those torches, they could see lovely maidens on the boat smiling at them. There was a feast there too, laid out on the deck, ready to eat. Arthur and Accolon were very hungry, and they went on board and ate the feast. Afterwards, they fell asleep. It was all part of the spell Morgan had cast. When Arthur woke, he found himself bound hand and foot in chains in a dungeon. When his eyes grew used to the darkness, he saw there were other men around him, all in chains like himself. "We are prisoners of Sir Damas," said one of them. "Where is Sir Accolon?" asked King Arthur, but nobody answered. At last a maiden appeared. "I have a message from Sir Damas," she said. "Whoever fights and kills his enemy for him will be set free." "Unloose me," cried Arthur. "I shall do it." So they released him from his chains and took him out of the dungeon. They gave him a suit of armor, a helmet, and a sword, which they told him was his own sword, Excalibur. He took the sword in his hand and pulled down the visor of his helmet. Then they led him to the place where he was to fight. The battle was long and hard. Neither man could see who he was fighting because their faces were covered except for their eyes. First, Arthur was on top, then his opponent. "Who are you?" wondered Arthur. "You are indeed a worthy opponent." Just as Arthur thought he had victory within his grasp, his sword snapped. His opponent raised his sword to strike the mortal blow. Then the sword fell from his hand. Arthur turned to see the lady of the lake standing there. He flung his useless sword down and picked up his opponent's. To his astonishment, he found this sword was Excalibur. He had been fighting with the wrong weapon. He was so angry that he struck his opponent with Excalibur. Blood gushed from the wound. "Kill me!" cried the man in agony. Arthur froze. It was Sir Accolon's voice. He raised the man's visor and saw it really was Accolon. Arthur was filled with horror to think that he had fought one of his dearest friends to the death. And of course, Accolon had not known he was fighting Arthur. All this had happened because of Morgan Le Fay's treachery. It was she who had placed Excalibur in Accolon's hand, telling him he would be fighting on an unknown night for her. She was sure he was bound to win with Excalibur, and he would have triumphed too if the Lady of the Lake had not come to Arthur's rescue. It was her magic power that had saved him. When Arthur found out that what his sister had done, he realized for the first time how evil she was. Full of anger, he sent Sir Acklon's body to her. How she wept to see her lover dead, and her wicked plan defeated. But this isn't the end of the story, for Morgan, fearing what Arthur might do now he had found her out, decided to rob him of his most deadly weapon, Excalibur. So right away she went to the place where he had been taken the rest after his duel with Accolon. He was being cared for by nuns, who told her he was sleeping and should not be disturbed. "Take me to him," she demanded angrily. "He is my brother. You cannot keep me from him." They were afraid of her, so showed her to the room where Arthur lay sleeping. When she was alone with him, she tiptoed to the bed. In his right hand he clutched Excalibur, clutched it so tightly, even in his sleep, that she knew she could not take it from him without waking him up. So she took the scabbard and rode away. When Arthur woke and found the scabbard gone, he was very angry, for remember, the Lady of the Lake had told him never to be without the scabbard, which was worth more to him than 10 swords. "Who has been here?" he asked the nuns. "Your sister," they replied. "You shouldn't have let her in," he cried. "You have betrayed my faith in you." And he saddled his horse and rode off in pursuit of her, with Sir Ontzlake riding beside him. Their horses were very swift, and at last they caught sight of her in the distance. They spurred their horses on and rode even faster. When she saw how they were gaining on her, she flung the scabbard into a lake, and there it was lost forever. So now Arthur lacked its protection and could be killed in battle like anyone else. And Morgan, well, she was so scared now that she went to live far away in a huge castle, set on a high rock. She was so frightened that she only showed her face outside its thick walls at night. But the story of how she had tried to kill Arthur went round the kingdom, and nobody had a good word to say for her anymore. This was my little friends. If you want to listen to the next part, go and search for the quest for the Grail. See you later, my friends.